guys! Now this topic is about the NAT, Network Address Translation Technology. As we know that if we use the IPv4 address in our network, now the address is not enough. So one solution is we can deploy the NAT technology and divide the IP address to become private and public IP address. Then when we send the message to the internet, we can do the translation. And about the NAT technology, we have several different type technology. And in different scenario, for example, maybe you can use overload, and another one maybe use a static NAT. So if you want to know the detail of the principle and what's the key configuration, please follow me together, we can discuss it.
Hello guys, this video we will talk something about the NAT. And this is the last technology video of the RCNA course. In the same process, before we talk about the detailed technology, let's have a review of the practice question about ACL. What is standard ACL series number range? And the correct answer is A and C. This one is very easy, right? Of course, maybe when you do the configuration, you forgot the number. It don't matter. You can use a question icon and the devices will remind you which value you can use. And then let's see the detail of the NAT. Why we use the NAT technology? Because as we know, in our network, all the devices, maybe the terminal, maybe the network devices of layer 3 switch, router, firewall, if they want to force a message out, or maybe send some message to the other segment, the basic requirement is get an IP address. But about the IPv4 address, we only have 32 bits long, and this one is not enough for us. So, how to solve this problem? One technology, we can use IPv6. Because about IPv6, we have 128 bits long. So the IPv6 address is enough for us. Also, you want to give everything one IP address, like your door, like your maybe air condition, all of them can get an IPv6 address. But before we use IPv6, we also have one technology to solve the problem that the IP address is not enough. This technology is NAT. And the NAT, like the name, is Network Address Translation. So if we use this technology, we can make the internal network host. You can think if they use a private network address. To visit the outside network, maybe some devices use a public network address. In this technology, if we deploy on the devices, maybe it's a router, then the router will do the translation. And to use one public IP address to indicate multiple private network address, so we can solve the problem that IPv4 address is not enough. So the uses of the NAT, the basic one, we can solve the problem of insufficient address space because the IPv4 address is not enough, right? And we also can finish the interconnection of private IP address network with public networks. Because we divide the IP address to become private IP address and public IP address. And the private IP address everyone can use. And this address cannot be directly forwarded to the public network. So if we deploy this technology, we can interconnection between the private and public network. So now let's see the detail. The first function, the NAT full name is Network Address Translation. So the basic function is to translate the internal private address to become legal public network address. So this one is a basic function. So if we use this mechanism, we can save the number of registered IP address and simplify the IP address management task in large networks. In our real network, maybe one or two public address is enough for multiple terminals to directly visitors outside. And we also can allow an entry organizer to appear on the internet with one public IP address. So maybe in your private network, you have more than 100 devices, but maybe all of them will use the same public address to visit outside. So if someone wants to attack your network, it's very difficult, right? Because I don't know what's your real network address. So if we use NAT, maybe we can combine our private network, the headquarters and the branch together. And if we want to visit the internet, we can use the NAT technology to translate the private network address to become public network address. And if the message need to visit the private network again, you also can do the translation. Of course, if you want to make the private IP address like headquarters and branch to do the communication, we also have the other technology like the VPN, but this is another one. The principle is different. And in the NAT technology, we have some concepts. The first one is inside local address and inside global address. Inside local address means IP address of the internal host in the internet. That means the private real IP address. Inside the global address means which public IP address you will use to visit the internet, because we have to do the translation. Then another one is outside the global address and outside local address. The outside global address is the IP address of the host in the external network. Usually we will use a public IP address. And outside local address means IP address of outside host can be seen on the internet network. So usually you will find the outside global and outside local address maybe will be the same address. And if we use the NAT technology on the router, when we do the translation, the router will record something, because maybe some message come back. We have to translate the message to become the origin private IP address again. So how to do the recognition, how to write down this information? We will use the translation entry. And about the translation entry, we also have two types. The first one is simple. The simple means we only provide the map that will record the IP address information. And another one for the extended translation entry. We will record not only the IP address, but also the port number. Okay, so their basic concept maybe we will say on the NAT technology. So like this topology, if the terminal inside the IP address 192.168.1.100 want to visit the internet terminal, and the public IP address is 101.1.1, and the router combines the inside and outside together. So if we do the translation to visit the outside, the router will record the entry to add the inside local, inside global, outside local, and outside global information. So you will find the inside local is the real private IP address of the PC, 192.168.1.100. And the inside global address will be the translate address that's used by the private terminal, 100.1.1.100. And the outside local and outside global is the IP address that the private terminal want to visit the destination, 101.1.1. So the router will write down this information, add them into the entry. This is the source and the destination. When we wait to the internet, you will find the source IP address to become the public IP address, right? And in the NAT technology, we will divide the address to become public address and the private address. And what means the private IP address? Private IP address means any organization can use the private address space at the same time. Like this topology, different company, all of them can use the same segment 10.0.0.8, but there no IP address duplicate, right? So this is the first characteristic of the private IP address. The second one, because the private IP address, everyone can use it. So these addresses are not routable on the internet. You cannot directly to send out, maybe use OSPF packets to tell everyone I have one private IP address. It's not allowed. And the third one, if a network with a private address need to access the internet, we have to deploy the NAT technology. And this network device must be deployed at the export. And here is the private address range. We will divide 3 segments, 10.0.0.0 to 10.255, 255. This belongs to the classification A, right? And about the classification B, we also have the range to belong to the private IP address, and also about the third one, 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255. So maybe now, after this video, you can check your IP address of your computer if you use a bandwidth on your home, or maybe you use a bandwidth on your company. Now you are in the office, you can check the IP address. I guess lots of IP address belong to these 3 segments because you use a private IP address. Of course, if you use IPv6 address, this is another one. So this is private IP address. And how to do the NAT? We provide multiple classification. The static NAT. Static NAT means we only translate the IP address information. One public IP address only can be used for one private IP address, and you have to manually establish the mapping relationship. This method is often used when the inside address devices of an enterprise network need to be accessible to the outside network. For example, if you deploy one web server and you want to provide the service for outside the device, you can provide the static NAT. The second one is the dynamic NAT. The dynamic NAT means we can convert the specified inter IP address to one of a set of outside address pool. That means we can create a public IP address pool, and in the pool you can provide multiple, for example, 5 public IP address. And if someone wants to go outside, you can take one public IP address and then to do the translation. And this pool only can be support how many public IP address, how many people you can visit the internet at the same time. So this is a dynamic NAT. So you will find about the dynamic NAT and static NAT. Also, the public IP address is not enough, right? So usually we will use the third one. We call it overload NAT. When we do the translation, not only about the IP address, but we also will translate the port number. As we know, if we translate the port number, more than 65,000 port number we can use. So principally, one public IP address can be provided the service for more than 65,000. So it's very useful. Maybe in your company or maybe in your school, one single public IP address is enough for us to visit outside. And another one for the port mapping NAT. And about this technology, usually used for the service in the inside the network, mapping a service port number to an external network address. And one public IP address also can be used for multiple services in the inside. We can distinguish different services by the port number. The function is very similar like the static NAT, but the different one is port mapping can provide the port number translation. So usually we will divide the NAT technology by 4 types. And later we will explain one by one how to work about different NAT technology and what's a key command.